Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. We are getting ready to get started.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. Yeah, we are getting ready to get started. So if you could keep your all right.
You're on mute, Rakaya.
I see that I was muted. Let's see. So yes, we are getting ready to get started, and we're waiting for a few more folks to have the opportunity to join, and we will get started shortly. Thanks for your patience.
¿Cómo se hace esto? ¿Quieres ayudarme, Marcelo? Espérate. Espérate, Marcelo. Uy. ¿Qué le pasó a esto? Espérate, amorcito. Momentito. ¿Quieres mamá? Ya viene mamá, ¿ok?
Everyone, thanks for joining. We are still waiting on a few more people to join, and we will get started shortly. Thanks for your patience. All right, Carrie, are you in? Carrie, are you there?
Okay, this is Tawana McMicken.
Hi, Tawana.
Hi.
We are about to get started. We're just making sure one of our co-hosts has been able to join.
Okay.
If you would give us just one more minute.
Okay.
Hello, this is Anita Shelton, DC Women in Politics, joining you.
Hi, Anita. Welcome.
I'm going to go on audio, not video. I won't be seen, but I'll be hearing you.
All right, that's wonderful. We are about to get started. It seems like our co-host is on the call and is just having trouble hearing us. So I thank you for your patience, everyone. You guys, I'm sure, have had some tech fun over the course of this pandemic. I know I have seen a lot. Carrie, let us know when you can hear us. All right. Well, I don't want to hold you all up any longer, so let's go ahead and get started, and I'm sure we will be graced with Carrie's presence fairly shortly. My name is Rakaya Ambar Shaheen. I'm the Director of Early Childhood at DC Action for Children. Thank you all for joining us for this virtual town hall on today's updated child care subsidy payment guidance. Shortly, we'll hopefully be joined by my co-host, Carrie Thornhill of the DC Early Learning Collaborative. We know you've all been waiting for the updated guidance, as the current guidance comes to a close in just a week. Did I hear someone? Last week, 6 child care provider associations sent a letter to the mayor, deputy mayor Kine, the city administrator, and OSSI, sharing the experiences and challenges child care providers are facing and asking OSSI to continue making flexible payments through December of this year. Today, we're joined by Sarah Mead, Assistant Superintendent for Early Learning, who will present OSSI's updated child care subsidy payment guidance, answer questions you have about the guidance, and hear your feedback about how this guidance will impact your business. For now, if everyone could please stay on mute, we will shortly turn it over to Sarah to share the updated payment guidance. But in the meantime, I wanted to make sure everyone is able to use the technology that we will be using to field all of your questions. If you look at the screen at the bottom, you'll see at the very bottom in the green bar, it says go to Menti, www.menti.com. That's MENTI.com, and use the code 7996628. It's on the screen, and we'll paste it in the chat as well to make sure that everyone has it. Again, it's www.menti.com, MENTI, and the code is 7996628. And I'm going to give everyone just a second to get over onto there. Once you get to that screen, you're going to see a question, I believe, I hope. And that question is, what ward is your business located in? If you could please answer that question, I'll get a sense of how many folks have found this screen. I see a lot of responses coming in right now. Ward 8 is in the lead with
Excuse
8.
me, I do apologize. You want
Go
us to
ahead.
go to www.menti.com?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and then use the code 7996628. Again, for folks on the phone, menti.com. The code is 7996628. Seems like more folks are rolling in. If you're having trouble, please feel free to let us know and we'll make sure to give you instructions. It looks like we have about a third of folks are in there now.
You get in there.
And you'll go to www.menti.com. You can open that on your regular browser, or if you're in your phone, you can use whatever browser is in there. And you can use the code 7996628. Those numbers are getting up there, so I think more of you are finding it. If you're having trouble, please feel free to ask a question about how to get in. I want to make sure everyone's able to get on here because this is going to be the spot where we ask you to send your questions so that we can make sure Sarah is hearing your questions and able to respond to them on this call.
I don't see where to enter in the WWMENTI.
You would go to your browser, so like Internet Explorer or Chrome, and you would type it in there. So whatever you usually use to browse the internet, you would open that up. Type in www.menti.com. If it's easier, you might want to go and type the address into Google. So wherever you might go and Google something, you would type www.mti.com, and it should show you this website as a result.
Okay, Carrie.
If you're not able to get in, that's okay. You still are going to be able.
Prepared to present Sarah if you're ready.
Oh, there you are. Yes, Carrie, just give us one more minute to make sure everyone is on the technology we'll be using, and then we'll get started. All right, it looks like more and more folks are hopping on there. So the code is gonna stay up on the bottom, and that green bar, the website and the code are gonna still be there if you need to refer to them. And then right now, I'm gonna hand it off to Carrie, who will do a quick introduction, and then we'll hand it off to Sarah to get started. If you have questions, we're about to switch over to our next, we will switch over to our next window now. And in that window, you'll see the question, what questions do you have for Sarah? So once you're on there, you can, as Sarah is speaking, you're welcome to type in as many questions as you like. And once she's done speaking, I'll make sure to ask them. If you would like to ask the question personally, we'll have an option for that too, and I'll share that after she speaks. Carrie, would you like to begin?
This is Carrie Thornhill, president of the DC Early Learning Collaborative. And we're delighted that all of you have taken time from your busy schedule to join us for this important discussion about the subsidy payment guidance. We had hoped when we planned this that you would have received the updated policy guidance on yesterday. And so you just received it today, and so you've not had the chance to really discuss it and just ask all the questions that you wish after Sarah makes her presentation. But we want to point out a couple of areas that some of the leadership of your provider organizations, advocacy organizations, included in the letter, which included continue making payments to all participating providers, whether open or temporarily closed, and minimize payment reductions, and continue payments through December of this year. I'm going to be pointing some of these out at the end of the meeting as well, but at least those couple of points will give you somewhat of a framework as you listen to Sarah's presentation. So at this point, we want to thank Sarah for joining us at this time. As you all know, Sarah has only been on the job for about a month. So she's new in this role, though she is not new to early learning and early care policy, and certainly not new to the city and its education system. But we're delighted that she's here, and so we want to hear her, and please listen carefully. Sarah?
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to DC Action for Children and DC AUIC and the collaborative and all of you who have put this together. We know that the guidance that we released earlier today has implications for many early learning facilities and child care providers, early childhood educators, and leaders in the city. And so we thought it was important to have an opportunity to talk with folks, hear your feedback, questions, and concerns, try to answer any questions that we can, and highlight some areas where we're going to be seeking additional input from you going forward. I realize when we scheduled this, we thought we would be able to put the guidance out yesterday. It ended up getting pushed back to today, so some of you haven't had as much time to look at it as might be optimal. This will not be the only opportunity to engage or ask questions. Please do direct questions to me personally, to the team, to OSSI Dell Communications email, through any of those channels, and we'll be working to answer questions that folks have or hear your feedback after this call as well. So I want to give a brief overview of what we've put out today and talk a little bit about the rationale before we can hear a little bit of background and feedback from you. So if we can move on to the next slide that I have here. So what are the key changes in the policy that we rolled out today? This is not every piece of the policy, but these are the key ones. So first, the current subsidy reimbursement policy, in which we are paying subsidy providers based on average monthly payments from October 2019 to January 2020, will continue through October 31st, 2020. Starting in November of 2020, however, we will return to making subsidy payments based on attendance. When we do that, we will also make revisions to the excused and unexcused absence policies to account for the fact that there are likely to be increased absences during the public health emergency, and try to stabilize funding for providers across those absences. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. In addition, full day care for school-aged children who are receiving subsidy will be reimbursed at the full day rate while schools are in a virtual posture. Finally, I want to point out that families will remain eligible for subsidized childcare until the district enters phase 4 of reopening. This is not a change, but it does clarify some information that we put out earlier by explaining that the requirement to redetermine eligibility when families reach their 12-month eligibility will be put on hold until the district reaches phase 4 of the public health emergency. We had not sort of clearly defined when that end of the public health emergency for this policy would be. The one exception to this I want to flag is that children who turn 13 during the public health emergency would lose their eligibility at their next redetermination date. So not when they turn 13, but at their next redetermination date. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that. If we can move on to the next slide, I want to talk a second more about the changes in the attendance policy. So we are increasing the number of unexcused absences for which providers may be paid from 5 unexcused absences, which is the typical policy, to 10 in recognition that there are likely to be more absences because children cannot come to childcare if they're experiencing various symptoms that are common to young children because families may be quarantining for those reasons. In addition, we are clarifying that COVID-related absences are excused absences with appropriate documentation. This includes, but is not limited to, times when children are excluded or dismissed from care due to observed symptoms, children who are quarantined following travel or close contacts, or periods when a program is closed at the direction of DC Health. And providers may be reimbursed for up to 15 excused absences per month. This is spelled out in more detail in the guidance, and if you have any questions about it, please do direct them to us. We do want to make sure people are clear about these so that folks are getting paid for times when children may be absent for these reasons. I want to also then talk a little bit about the timeline for these changes. So the way our reimbursements for subsidy typically work is that folks receive a payment in 1 month that is based on the services provided in the previous month. So in September, folks just received the payment for services provided in August. In October, folks will receive the payment for services provided in September. And in November, we will switch the policy to the attendance policy, but the payment that people receive in November will be based on the services that were provided in October. So those will still reflect the payments that were based on attendance. So December is the first time that people would actually see a change in the payment that they receive under this new policy. Providers who are open and serving children at any point in November will receive a December payment based on their November attendance, whether they are open on November 1st or at some other date in the month. I want to be clear that we are not requiring anyone to open by November 1st. Child cares are independent businesses and nonprofits, and it's your decision whether to reopen or remain closed. It will affect subsidy payments, but we will also pay people for any time that they are open and serving children in November, whether or not you are open on November 1st. And that would continue through the months going on beyond that as well. So we can move on to the next slide. I do want to talk a little bit about why we are making this change. So earlier in the year, in March and then in April, when the district moved to a different reimbursement policy for subsidies, that policy was really intended as a short-term strategy to support the childcare sector during stay-at-home orders when the vast majority of childcare facilities were closed in response to the public health emergency. It was not intended to be a long-term strategy, and the public health emergency, unfortunately, has gone on and may continue to go on much longer than we initially expected it to. As it has continued and as facilities have begun to reopen, continuing payments based on the average past monthly payment is creating some unintended consequences, including providers who take on new subsidy eligible children have not been able to receive increased payment for those children. Families who are newly eligible for subsidy have faced barriers to accessing care because the providers are not going to be paid additionally under the current under the policy that's been in place for those children. And it's also creating challenges for families who need to move children from closed to open providers. We've also heard a lot of questions about reimbursing childcare for school-age children and whether we can pay for a full rate while school-age children are in care and schools are in a virtual posture. That is something that we believe is important to do given the changing needs of families in our community and the adjustments that some childcare facilities are making to support their businesses. But while we were paying based on these average past monthly payments, that wasn't something that we had the ability to do. More broadly, continuing to lock in the past payments may penalize or create barriers to childcare providers seeking to adapt their businesses in response to these new operating conditions. And so those are some of the reasons that we've thought about this. As we return to payment based on attendance, we are also thinking about what are the other ways in which we can target funds to support the child care center. We are fortunate in the District of Columbia that we have a very generous local investment in child care subsidy, about $63 million in FY 2021, combined with the money that we received from the federal government for the Child Care and Development Block Grant and money from Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. The district has committed a total of $115 million in child care subsidy funding for FY 21. And Mayor Bowser's FY 21 budget kept that subsidy funding level with FY 20 despite deep cuts elsewhere. We know in an ideal world that level of funding would have gone up because we are seeing dramatically increased needs for support for the child care sector. But in a context where many other city functions experience decreasing revenue, this does show a commitment. There are two implications of that. One is that we are not taking this step as a way to decrease funding for the child care sector overall. Rather, because the district spends so much local funding on childcare, we have flexibility to use that funding in some slightly different ways than we might normally do in order to support the childcare sector as we return to payments based on attendance. And one of the things that I'm hoping to hear from folks in this conversation and others, and to work with you on as a community going forward, is really informing the thinking about how we can spend some of those funds to support you all as we work through the next several months. So if we can move on to the next slide, I want to talk about a couple of scenarios because I know the first question people ask in this is, what does this mean for me? So one common scenario we know is a child care facility that is closed. Under the current policy, that facility has been receiving subsidy payments based on your average monthly payment from October 2019 to January 2020. After November 1st, that facility will continue to receive subsidy payments only if it is open and children are attending in person in November. Facilities that open after November 1st will receive payments for attendance from whatever date they open. Another common scenario we've heard about is a child care facility that is open but serving fewer children due to health and safety requirements. We know that those health and safety requirements do limit the number of children that can be served in many facilities. That facility has been receiving also subsidy payments based on the average monthly payment from October 2019 to January 2020. After November 1st, that facility's subsidy payments would reflect actual child attendance, so maybe lower. We are exploring funding options, as I mentioned, to mitigate that impact, and we'll have further discussions with you about that. A third scenario that we have heard about is a child care facility that's open and has taken on additional subsidy eligible children since the start of the public health emergency. Like the other facilities I just mentioned, that facility receives subsidy payments based on the average monthly payment from October 2019 to January 2020, and so may not have received additional payment for newly enrolled subsidy children. After November 1st, that facility's subsidy payments will reflect actual child attendance, including any new subsidy eligible children enrolled since the start of the public health emergency. Another scenario that I'll mention briefly is a child care facility that is open and is serving school-age children while schools are in a virtual posture. As with the other cases, that facility, under the policy that has been in place, has been receiving subsidy payments based on the average monthly payment from October 2019 to January 2020. So whether you're serving school-aged children would not have affected your subsidy payment. After November 1st, that facility's subsidy payments will reflect actual child attendance, including full-day payments for school-aged children, for school-age subsidy children receiving full-day care. The overall impact on the facility's payments would depend on the attendance of all subsidy children served. This also would have impacts for facilities that are newly open or facilities that newly become subsidy providers that I won't go into detail about in this conversation because I want to move to questions and conversation. I do want to briefly touch on some of the other things that we are doing to support folks. We do know that this is a challenging time for folks in the childcare sector, and we know that this policy in and of itself may create challenges for people. That's why we're working on a number of other mechanisms and strategies to support people during this time. If we can move on to the next slide, I'll talk about a few of those. First, I believe you all should now have been contacted by the Deputy Mayor for the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development's office about the DC Child Care Provider Relief Fund, which is providing $5 million in emergency operational funding to local child care facilities. That's important funding that I know many of you who are on this call worked hard to secure, and we are glad it is going out to essentially all child care facilities in the district. We wanted to make sure that people heard this announcement at the time you were receiving those funds so that you could take both pieces into account in planning for how to use them. We know that there are additional funding needs, and so we are exploring other ways we might be able to financially assist childcare providers, and we'll share that additional information as we are able. I want to briefly touch on a couple other things that we are doing to provide assistance to childcare businesses and facilities during this time. OSSI has made personal protective equipment available to any childcare facility in the district to ensure the health and safety of staff, children, and families and reduce financial burden. Some of you may already have received some of that equipment this summer. Those of you who have not, there will be additional distributions in September and October. If you have not received information about that, you can contact your licensing specialists. Free ongoing technical assistance is also available for implementing COVID guidance, and our licensing and compliance team is supporting providers who wish to amend their licenses or seek waivers to serve new children and families while working in the context of current health and safety guidance. And finally, we also have provided some resources with information on reopening in our recovery guide, and we will continue with the biweekly calls with the early childhood community to share information on health and safety guidance and also engage around questions and feedback people have related to this policy and other policies. We know we've been getting questions routinely in those conversations about subsidy policy post September 30th. So those are the updates that I wanted to share with you all. Again, I know this is a difficult time for the childcare sector overall and for the city, and we are facing a wide variety of difficult and complicated choices that have a number of trade-offs. I look forward to hearing sort of your feedback as well as your questions and working with you to identify the ways that we can support the childcare sector and all of you through these changes and continue to ensure a strong childcare sector for the district going forward.
Thank you, Sarah. The questions are rolling in. If you would like to ask your question in person, please at the top of your screen on the right, if you have the participant section open, you can click the button on the right that says raise hand, and we will call on you. Jared will let me know that you're waiting, and I will call on you to ask your question. Otherwise, if you would prefer to put your question in Menti, you can do that as well, and then I will read those questions as much as possible out loud. We have quite a lot of questions, so I I don't imagine we'll get to all of them today, but I will do my best. Before we get started on those, just wanted to remind you, go back in, put your questions in as we're talking. And Jared, are there any people waiting to speak? Do they have their hands up?
Yes, we have Sarithia Robinson and Bridget Hall. Let's get started with Sarithia.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing that information. So one of the issues I've thought a lot about is issues related to enrollment. And we are a provider that's open, and there are a number of providers across the city that haven't opened yet. But across the city, we've seen in schools challenges with enrollment for a variety of reasons, everything from parents not feeling comfortable, staffing challenges, et cetera. So I guess my question is, we're on kind of a limited timeline, especially if you're opening, or even if you have opened, it's still difficult to enroll. So how is OSSI prepared to support providers as they try to get through some of these challenges and enroll children, provide support to families, but also just make sure that they are able to enroll enough children to support the cost of operating?
I really appreciate that question, Sarithia, and it's one of the things that has been on our mind in weighing the various trade-offs that this has for different people. We know that with the health and safety guidance and also other factors, many programs are operating at reduced capacity. Two pieces there I want to highlight. One is, to the extent that this is partly something where folks are thinking about how to communicate with families and encourage families to feel safe coming back to childcare, we are working through the health and safety guidance that we provide to send messages not just to childcare facilities about how to stay safe, but also to underscore for parents and families that there are a wide variety of steps being put in place to keep children safe in childcare. And we've also provided materials, family flyers, other things to help childcare facilities communicate with parents and families about both what is being done in childcare to keep kids and families safe, and also what families can do and should expect to help ensure that happens. Obviously, the financial question goes beyond that, though, and that is exactly sort of where we are looking at what are the steps we can take in parallel with this policy to help mitigate some of that impact. There are a variety of things that we are looking at, including is it possible to adjust rates in some way? Are there grants we could put out? We'll be consulting with people on that. While folks are sort of looking towards November 1st, we'll also be engaging in dialogue with folks about that to inform sort of what would actually be most useful and responsive to people within the context of what we're able to do.
Thanks, Sarah. Is Bridget Hall ready to ask her question?
Yes. I thank you also, Sarah. I'm Bridget Hall from Big Mama's Children's Center. So my concern was definitely associated with what the young lady just said, but also piggybacking off of that, with DCPS opening at full capacity in November, or expected to do so, will the CBOs be allowed to do so too? Because if by chance parents gain comfortability, a comfortable level or secure level to bring their children back, because we still have a lot of parents that are definitely not comfortable with it. But if there is an increase, a need for childcare, will the CBOs be able to go back to full capacity? Because my concern is sustaining my program at the capacity that is allowable. My facility is not able to break down into multiple classrooms of 8. I am licensed for 88, and with my facility, the structure of my facility, I will only be able to accommodate 40. So that's less than half of my licensing capacity, and I will definitely not be able to sustain my business, let alone my payroll, on those amount of children allowed. So that is a big concern as to, sustaining, my business. I don't know how long we'll be able to stay open at the capacity that the health, mandate is right now.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you raising that. We are aware that that's a challenge for folks, and we're aware that the release sizes with the health and safety guidelines have been a challenge for many folks, even with the current subsidy policy, because many programs serve a mix of children who are private pay or whose families are paying tuition, as well as children who are receiving subsidy. And so even if the subsidy had been held constant, that the private tuition was also being impacted in some cases. We are working with DC Health. DC Health is the agency that drives the size caps that are included in the health and safety guidance. And those are not things that are within OSSI's sort of control to set ourselves. We know that that's a concern for people, and intend to remain in dialogue with you and with DC Health about those size restrictions. But I can't say when those will change because it does depend on the public health emergency, and it comes out of DC Health.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. There's a question in the chat from Lillette Campbell. If new subsidy clients are accepted during the health emergency, will their payment be retroactive after November 1st?
We do not have anything in place to put payments retroactive to pre-November 1st in place at this time, but that is the kind of idea that is helpful to hear from people.
Oops, I didn't unmute myself. I have a question from the Menti. It says, oh boy, I lost my screen. Will the center still get paid for any family that wants to continue distant learning instead of coming into the center? And there are quite a few questions about virtual learning. Yep. With the new guidance.
Under the new guidance, the subsidy payments after November 1st would be based on children attending in person.
Okay, we have another question. We had 65 kids. Currently, we only have 5 kids interested in returning. Will OSSI help sustain us?
So our goal is to support folks that, and we are currently looking at sort of how do we do that, both through subsidy and through other mechanisms. I think the reality that we are all facing here is that the magnitude of the impact across the sector is bigger than what we can address even with the resources that we have available, because it has cut across so many ways. So we want to work with folks and continue to work with folks to think about how we can best support you in this time. But we also realize that there are challenges that go beyond what is within our capacity to address. So we will continue working with folks. So.
Thank you. Jared, is there anyone with their hand up right now?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Anita Miller-Tolliver. I do apologize. My name is Anita Miller-Tolliver, and I'm trying to get this question answered. And I'm just going to give you a scenario of what's going on with me. What kind of financial relief for providers who are under construction where they was getting their home expanded? I stopped working July the 30th because my place is supposed to be under renovation, and I contact OSSI because during renovation, no children could be present. Yep. So therefore, there's nothing written how any financial assistant can assist me with maintaining my business. So is there anything in place? Because when we speak of October 2019 all the way up until present, providers, they was getting paid. I would just like to know, when you was talking about the scenario of other questions, but this is a question I've been trying to get answered about people who got stuck through COVID-19 with the DCRA permits, and not able to open and still under construction. What kind of financial relief you can help me with?
Yeah, I appreciate you raising that, and I think we have heard that concern in another setting as well. Because there's a lot of details in there that are specific to your situation, I'm going to suggest we follow up and have a conversation offline. I'll make sure that my email address goes in the chat so that people can contact me. We can have a follow-up conversation offline about that.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep.
My name is Anita Miller Tolliver.
Thank you.
I have another question from an email that I got in advance. Several people sent me questions in advance, and thank you so much for doing that. This question is, why is OSSI continuing to give out vouchers to parents knowing that childcare providers receiving subsidy will not receive payment for new or transferred children while average pay is in effect?
Right.
So the families and children are still coming to us and applying for eligibility and need the services. And part of the reason that we are making this change is to enable those families to receive services going forward and to enable providers to be paid for those services going forward.
Jared, is there anyone else in that with their hand up?
Yes, we have Rhonda Banks.
Go ahead, Rhonda.
Okay, if Rhonda's not able to participate.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Here I am. I was actually having a conversation on mute. Excuse me.
No worries. No worries.
All right. So I have a question, and my question is, my license now can serve kids ages 6 weeks to 5 years. If I'm hearing now from the new updated information that came out today, I can have kids now up to 13 years of age. So if that is the case, and they're not on my subsidy list at all, but can they come in and do I have to go to DCRA to get my license now changed over from 0 to 13 years of age?
You would need to contact your licensing specialist to figure out what changes exactly you would need to make to your license.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There was a question earlier on that I've lost, but the question was, the effect was, if we have to have a closure at our facility based on a positive COVID case, are all of those absences considered excused?
Yes, the intention of the policy is for those absences to be continued excused. What you would need to do is provide documentation, for example, information provided to you by DC Health. If they contacted you to inform you of the case, would be documentation. You could also have your own documented notes of the situation too.
Great. Jared, is there anyone with their hand up?
Yes, Tamina Adams.
Hello, good evening. So really fast, in the guidance, I did not see, and it could be I missed it, is how best to advise families who we can't meet their capacity, we can't meet their needs. So for example, a family is eligible, they want to attend, we don't have the space due to the guidance. You know, the question, so that we can inform our parents, are they going to be terminated? Are they going to have to reapply? Because as there is a childcare shortage, there will take a little bit of time to find another location. The other thing is to find out if there is a way that we can participate in advocacy with the Department of Health about the increased size capacity, because I think that going into the limitation of group sizes, that if we as providers could participate in some of these conversations with the Department of Health, we could provide some visibility into what the national standards are. Because even going to a group size of 12, which our local entities around us are doing, could be really beneficial to a lot of us.
So there were multiple pieces in your question, so apologize if I miss any of them. For the families that you can't serve capacity of, I would urge you to put them in touch with DC Child Care Connections, who are doing referrals and supporting families to access care. I think there may be some other questions in there around specific impacts on the timeline for subsidy families that I can't answer right now, but it is something that I have heard raised and will bring back to folks on our team to look at. I can't tell you how to advocate to DC Health. I do think that it might be valuable for them, though, to hear from early childhood programs about how this is impacting you, or to learn more about your programs to help inform their understanding.
Thanks, Sarah. There's a question in the Menti. The new guidance appears to be treating early learning centers as babysitters, not education facilities. Why are centers that are providing virtual learning not being given consideration for continued payment beyond October 31st?
I appreciate this question. We do recognize that early care and education is education, and it is about supporting children's development. We also understand that child care subsidy is created to also serve some purposes around providing care for children. We have heard people raise the question about virtual learning, and do want to have a further conversation about how we might think about supporting that going forward. This specific guidance with subsidy reimbursements will focus only on in-person services, however.
There's a question. I want to be clear, regardless of your program, I assume this means regardless of whether your program is open or not, you will get payment from October to November 2020.
For the services delivered from October to November 2020, those services will continue to be paid under the current policy. So folks for October will continue to be paid based on the average monthly payment. Yes.
Thank you. Jared, who's in the chat? Has their hand up?
Hazel Hott has her hand up with their hand up.
Hazel, go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm not gonna say that I'm Miss Hazel, but I am gonna say it's about 4 of us here from other daycares together. And my question to you, Miss Sarah, that you wasn't able to answer a lot of questions for us, but you did do a little good job. So my question to you is that, so you have daycares who have received money from the mayors to start a new facility, along with you have daycares. I heard Big Mama Daycare just speaking, that's cutting back on her. What other daycares cutting back on their staff and their children because we have to downsize the staff in our building. That's number one. So I need to ask the question, is the mayor familiar with that? Most of the daycares are about to shut down because if you don't have revenue to help out and save the child care facilities, then how are they going to meet the next level? In other words, I'm saying this to you. You just said earlier that everything's going to be cut off when it comes to November. In other words, you get full pay, average pay. But what happened to be able to maintain, to save the child development centers? Where do the staff go? Do they all go back to the unemployment office? Because you and I both know most of the child kids that I've talked to in the last couple of days, they only have 5 kids. Some of them have 6, some of them have 10. So at the end of the day, how do they maintain their staff? You said the mayor gave $5 million. When I did see that $5 million, I'm talking real fast because I don't want to get time cut off. $5 million, but you took $11,800 gave to certain daycares, and then you had 17 for another daycare. And I did my math, it was 12,000 for other daycares. That's nowhere near $5 million. So what money are they going to get from that $5 million to give to child care facility to sustain them, to keep them so we won't have to close the doors, because I'm one of those ones who have a brand new child care facility. So the mayor gave me money to open up that daycare, but I had to put another $300,000 to also continue that too. So do I lose all that? Because I should not be responsible for that money if that should happen. Because coronavirus, none of us never asked to come in place. So some should be in place a little better than that. So as I close out, let me say what I'm gonna do. I'm going to a house and start protesting. I don't care what nobody else do, these child care facilities. We have to make our voice be heard besides on this computer right here. So that's all I had to say. So I don't see no help right now. What I do see is a disaster about to come down the hill for all child development centers in the nation capital, Washington, D.C. This agenda is not a good one, because I'm looking at it, I've read everything, you know, October, everything ends this place, and you're gonna give the average. So if a person open a child care right now, they got 5 children, I like to know how they're gonna pay their mortgage, you know, how they're gonna pay the Pepco, the rent, anything else. So you all not putting this together real good. And sorry, sir, that you came on this a crash for Corona-19, but none of us participate for this to ever happen in life. This is not a norm. This is something no one participates. So we need to have you to really come out to help us out. Sir, you have a wonderful day. So we're just visiting Mary's house. That's what I'm planning.
Thank you, ma'am.
Jared, is someone else ready with their hand up?
Yes. Kiamisha Phillip.
Kamisha Philpotts. Hi, my name is Kamisha Philpotts. I'm a teacher at Roots Activity Learning Center in DC. We have a lot of questions, but I'm going to try to be brief. One of our concerns is we've been getting back a lot of surveys of parents who do not want to bring their children back, but would like to the distant learning. A lot of them have health issues, lung disease, asthma, so they don't feel safe. And they're also concerned about the other children that they have at home. Who will be dealing with them, you know, for instance, if they're a teacher. So they would have to come in, who will be with their children, and why isn't it considered the same for, you know, DC schools, as just like how Maryland and charter schools are extending till January. If distance learning, we have proof, we have a log, we have pictures, because we still do webinars, we still do Zoom classes all day. Why isn't that considered, you know, in school learning, or why can't we get paid for that? Because for instance, my whole class right now, class of 10, does not want to come back, but does want distant learning. So why can't our facility continue to get paid for that? And if we can, I mean, if we cannot, well, I should let you answer first, but if we cannot, why? That's my question.
I appreciate the feedback on that. Right now, our understanding is that the child care subsidies should be supporting both early care and education and in-person child care, but we appreciate the feedback and are open to further conversation.
So there's no answer?
No.
Thank you. Is there any other hands up, Jared?
Yes, I have another question.
Yes.
Miss Anita, can we let someone who hasn't asked yet go first? Is that okay?
Sure, I apologize.
Hey, this is Mr. Credit. I didn't see the hand option, but I have a question. And I think I speak for a lot of people on this call and a lot of centers. This is going to be extremely detrimental to a lot of centers. A lot of centers are going to go out of business. You know, we only have 1 month to go ahead and try to bolster our enrollment. And like Bridget said earlier, you know, we can only get so many children into our classrooms, whereas DCPS and Maryland, Virginia have you know, can get larger size classrooms. And it seems like once again, we're here, and I mentioned this on one of our previous meetings about the poor communication between OSSI and the providers. Once again, we're here basically after the horse has left the barn, the policy has already been enacted, and we're here asking for comments and guidance from the provider community. It's too late now. The time to ask for that was prior to this policy being enacted. And, you know, Rakai and I had a conversation earlier today. we came up with a couple of different and far better options than what is going on now. So a lot of people on this call have a lot of knowledge, a lot of skill, who could have really helped with this policy, but were just left out. And now we're stuck in this really, really challenging position. Everybody's here is stressed out. Everyone here is worried about how to keep their businesses going. And it seems like, I'm just very upset. I'm very, very upset that there seems to be no real emphasis on getting the centers the help that they need. And I also want to know, why is it that OSSI seems to be issuing more childcare licenses now, while some of the current childcare centers are struggling? I can't understand that. So half of it's a question and half of it's just venting. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And we, I understand where you're coming from on this. And we have heard a lot of this feedback from folks in earlier conversations. We do want to have a conversation going forward about what some of the other ways we can look at to support the childcare sector going forward are, and hope that we can engage with you as well as others in those.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for interjecting. I just want to also put on you guys' mind that the mayor just gave extra money back on to the unemployment. You have a lot of people that are choosing to stay on unemployment versus going back because the money is back there. So you have those parents that's not going to bring your children back. You do have some that are scared to bring them back, but just because they have the opportunity to stay home, they're choosing to stay home. I've heard it several times. So all of that being said is, we're not going to be able to get our capacity numbers even to match what the limited amount is. I'm very, very nervous, as well as us all. We're very nervous as to our future. I mean, I don't even see us lasting past 2 or 3 months on the numbers that I have right now. So.
Good evening. How you doing? I have my hand up. I just wanted to say something if I could.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
How you doing? My name is Kevin Hart. My only concern is that in a climate where there is no confidence in our political structure, why now? We have an election coming up on November the 3rd. We're actually getting ready to shift and impact the financial stability of the centers right around the holiday season. You know, most people have psychologically put in their mind that we're not doing anything until 2021. Why is it that we're not sensitive to what the climate and context is in the current lack of confidence in our political structure? Our mayor speaks about her lack of confidence in the political structure, but now we are making a major decision that's going to not only impact the providers, but it's also going to impact DC residents that rely on these jobs to support their families right around the holiday time. What better way to say we understand what you've been doing over these last, going to put more pressure on you during the time when families are coming together, just to say, just to come together. And I'm speaking from a different place, but it's just like, why now? You know, I understand that we all have, this is business, but we also understand that we're in relationship. We're in relationship with each other. And for us to make a decision like this with someone that we say we are in relationship with during the season when we are trying to grasp and scrape for anything that we can hold on to for a year that has been so disheartening, is really something that I'm questioning the relationship. I'm done.
Sarah, this is Kim Perry
Yep.
from DC Action. Did you want to respond to Kevin? And then I have a quick question.
I appreciate you communicating that, and I do take it seriously, and I hope that we can show you through our actions over the coming months that we do intend to value and resolve that relationship.
So one of the questions is, Sarah, as you know, many of the associations representing so many of the providers, 200 providers on this call almost, we're simply asking for an extension. Are you hearing what you have heard on this call tonight? Are you all willing to extend this to December 31st and to work more closely with providers on this call about what guidance could look like?
That's a question that I can't fully answer myself right now. I believe that the decision has been put in place, and I am eager to work with people around what steps we can take to mitigate some of the concerns people have and I do believe that there are real steps we can take, but I can't commit to any changes in the timeline at this point.
So the number one fear is not just negative impact and specifics, it's decimating our childcare sector. That at the beginning of the pandemic, I know we were clear in that if we didn't act quickly with stabilization funds, we could potentially lose up to 25% of the sector. Well, guess what? Now, with this guidance and the ending of these payments, we could be looking at 40% of our sector. And we were already in short supply before we started.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you recommend, if it's not your decision to make, who would you recommend we talk to and work with and urge to hear us, and that childcare programs need more time?
I can't make recommendations for you on your advocacy strategy. I can say that I have heard what you have said, and I will, share it with others in my sphere of influence.
This is Mr. Credit again. So, I'm sorry, but who does make that decision? If you're not making the decision, who did make the decision?
I think the decision has already been made, is what I'm saying.
Whom?
It's been made.
This is Lilette Campbell. One of the suggestions that I've heard from one of our monitors is that we alternate. Since the group size has to be limited to 8, you could have 8 Monday, Wednesday, and 8 Tuesday, Thursday, and so forth. So are the days that the children are not there considered absences? And would they be unexcused or excused?
I appreciate that question. We need to flesh that out in some frequently asked questions guidance, but we've heard it from other people and want to make sure we can get you clarity on that as soon as possible.
My concern, though, is that the questions that are coming up now are, to me, questions that should have been addressed before guidance was written. It's like people saying your education program should be this way, and they're not educators. So we're in a crazy position all around.
This is Tamina, real quick. I just would like to say, because I understand we have to move forward, and I understand it's scary for all of us. So one of the things in the immediate I want to ask, can OSSI give consideration to providing some type of technical assistance for providers to learn more about marketing to help boost their enrollment? Because I understand that at the end of the day, we may not be able to change this guidance. So if we cannot, let's begin to look at how can we partner with one another or partner with OSSI to maybe have vendors come in, provide webinars to help providers learn how to market through social media or other things. There's a lot of tools that we can leverage to try to help parents understand that there is some safety precautions that we're using as providers to try to get people to come in and building the relationships. So I think that that would be helpful, is if we can look at how can we help providers boost their enrollment? What can they do to get enrollment? Because marketing is something that is needed, and not everybody knows how to do that.
You need money to do marketing.
Okay, my name is Tawana McMickens, and I have...
One second, Tawana. This will be the last question because we are over on time. So please go ahead, and it will be the last question.
Okay, I didn't get to ask the question. This is Cynthia Davis. I wanted to ask the question. Go ahead, Tawana.
Okay, yeah, my question is short. I heard a lot of things that were not answered. Will there be a second meeting where you could come back and give us some of the answers to the questions that were not answered tonight?
Yes. First, I would encourage people to join the bi-weekly calls that we do. Second, we would be meeting in the future.
I'm on a bi-weekly. I'm on bi-weekly.
Okay. And then third, we will be looping back with people as we have additional sort of scenarios or information related to other types of financial assistance going forward to get input and inform those scenarios and thinking.
Sarah, if we host another town hall, will you be able to attend?
Yes, we would need to figure out sort of when that would be and what we would need to do and all those kinds of things. So yes.
Great. We'll
Okay.
follow up with you.
Yeah, because we need a follow-up to a lot of questions that were very important that did not get answered.
Yep.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate that.
Cynthia, I will let you be the last question, and then that really has to be it.
I can't go any further than that. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you, sir, for also attending this meeting to address some of our questions. I do hope that we can get a lot of our questions answered to provide a relief for the family child care and for the other child care community. My question is basically around inspection. It's just changing a little light on what everything that's going on. The providers are experiencing 20-minute calls and emails to them saying that they have to respond within 20 minutes. Now, if OSSI has the opportunity to respond within 24 to 48 hours, sometimes 72 hours, or sometimes they don't get back at all. So I'm saying that I think it should be more reasonable instead of telling someone that they need to respond within 20 minutes. What if I'm not even home? What if I'm in the grocery store? I got to rush back to the house to provide an inspection. I'm just saying that it's not reasonable amount of time. I think it need to be expressed to the specialists or monitors that 20 to 30 minutes is not a reasonable amount of time to respond back, but within an hour is a reasonable amount of time. But that's if you at the grocery store, you see the call, you can easily leave, get your grocery, gather yourself, and then drive back to your house without speeding and getting ready to kill yourself. So I'm just wanted to give a little light on that, and how do you think about that, and what is your response?
Thanks for flagging that, Ms. Davis. I don't want to get into a conversation about the specific situation here, but I think we can follow up offline. I know you've raised some of these questions before, and I want to follow up with you.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Rakaya. Rakaya, you're muted. One more time.
Sorry, I wasn't able to unmute myself. Thank you all for all of your questions and all of the comments that you've shared. We will definitely be collecting everything that was in the chat and in the Menti. I certainly did not get to read all of your questions out, and I know that there were several folks who were still waiting with their hand up who didn't get to answer questions. So if you would like to go back into the Mentimeter before you log off your computer for today, feel free to add more questions in there. You can also email Jamar Day, who's in the chat. It's jday@dckids.org, and we will collect all those questions and make sure that OSSI has them. And Sarah can respond to them as she's able. We will also we will also work with Sarah to try to host a second town hall to make sure more questions are answered. There was another portion of our Menti questions. I don't want to spend any time on it because we are over on time. But if Nisa, if you could share that screen. We had a few questions just to get a sense. I think we kind of have a sense of how everyone feels after this call, but I just wanted to just scroll through so everyone had a sense of kind of what the general responses were. Nisa, will you go to present? Thank you. So this is just the responses that folks shared about their concerns about the situation. It looks like there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty. There are a few questions that made their way into this one. Worry, scared, some questions, more questions, stressed. Yeah, I think you all get the sense of what's in here. And we'll be sharing this feedback as well. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to kind of share those feelings. Sarah, do you have any final words before I turn it over to Carrie? Can someone unmute Sarah, please?
No, thank you for hosting this conversation and for giving us the opportunity to talk. I do understand and respect the concerns and the fears that people have shared today. We are working to figure out how we can work through this to best support you. And I hope that the future conversations we'll have on this will help demonstrate some of that.
Thank you, Sarah. And then whoever has the muting powers, can you unmute Ikeem, because Carrie is on the phone with him.
You can go.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah, for spending this time. And thank all of you professionals for joining us for this discussion. We want to encourage you to continue reviewing this guidance since you've had so little time to review it. The material that has been shared today will be made available to you, and we'll figure out how to make sure that that happens. And of course, we also look forward to continuing these conversations with Sarah and with others about what needs to happen to ensure the stability and ability of our childcare community to move forward in providing the best quality of services for our children and families in the District of Columbia. We really appreciate all that you have done and will do in support of that goal. Thank you again. And we certainly want to thank the DC Action for Children for its leadership and support for this forum and all the other participating coalitions and groups. We certainly want to make sure also that you receive a copy of the letter that was sent to the mayor and other city leaders so that you have that framework to use as a part of your further discussion and review of the guidance that has been given. It was developed by several of the advocacy, child care advocacy organizations, including DC Association for the Education of Young Children, the DC Family Child Care Association, DC Head Start Association, the Directors Exchange, the Washington Association of Child Care Centers, and of course we mentioned DC Action for Children and the DC Early Learning Collaborative. We will continue this conversation. This is one of the most important priorities of our child care sector. Thank you all so very much.
And last thing is, in addition to that letter, Sarah, are we able to share the slides from today?
Yes.
Great. So you will get a follow-up email with all of that information.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.